Hello everyone, welcome to Lost in the Reel. Today I'm going to be ranking all 19 new release films that I saw in the month of March 2021. Now I won't be including films like The Vigil, which I did see this month, but that did come out in the month of February, and also films like The Dry, which I just reviewed because that has not come out yet. Also, a lot of the films that I saw at this year's South by Southwest Festival will not be included in this list because, of course, they haven't been released yet either. If you do want to check out my ranking for the South by Southwest Festival, I will include a link right up here for you to check that out. Now, without further ado, let's get started. So like in all of my ranking videos, I have 7 tiers that I rank these films on. We have worst of the worst, very bad, meh, just okay, very good, amazing, and the coveted spot of masterpiece. Now I will be going through and ranking each of these films in alphabetical order, and then once I have done that, I will move them all around so we have our clear worst of the month and the very best of the month. So just a forewarning before we start, I do not have a formal full review for each and every one of these films on my channel because there's just not enough time in the day. So I will go through and let you know how I feel about each and every one of these films as I go through the list. First up is Eric Andre's buddy road trip prank comedy, Bad Trip. Now, I was really shocked that so many people ended up loving this movie because I absolutely hated it. I thought it was disgusting, I thought it was flat out unfunny, and I thought it was extremely lazy in its execution of the pranks. Also, it's wrapped up in this whole story about friendship that I could not have cared less about, and I just think this is one of the worst movies of the year, or any year for that matter. I am really happy that people found enjoyment out of it, of course, because I wish the best for any movie, but I just really did not like this film. So, Bad Trip goes in the worst of the worst tier for me. Next up is the Tom Holland young adult sci-fi fantasy Chaos Walking. Now, this is one of 2 really bad Tom Holland films in the month of March. Chaos Walking, the more I've thought about it, the more it pisses me off because of what a good setup it was. It has a really good plot device of having this noise that you can hear what everyone is thinking. I really loved that idea, and we have 2 incredible young stars in Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley, and a great director in Doug Liman, so I don't know what the hell happened with this thing, but this movie was completely unfinished. It just felt like they decided to release it. They're like, fuck with it, like, we don't want to put any more effort into this film, and released it to us. I think they should have kept it on the shelves and never released it. This film makes me so angry. So, Chaos Walking goes in the very bad tier. So much potential that was squandered with this film. Speaking of Tom Holland, we have the Russo brothers' Cherry. Now, this was a film that a lot of people were really looking forward to, as was I, and it even had an Oscar campaign going towards it. Obviously, we see where that went. But this was a film that was very critically panned by both critics and audiences, and I can see why. This movie is extremely hard to get through because it's just such a drag. The subject material is so dark and heavy, with its themes on addiction and PTSD, and it's just a film that when I was finished with it, I just felt icky, and I really just wanted it to be over like halfway through. It's over long, and the stylistic flourishes are just too much. But I do have a feeling that people will revisit this film in the future and reassess their thoughts on it. So I think as time passes, this movie might gain a little bit more critical acclaim. I might be wrong, but I just have this feeling. But for now, Cherry goes in the meh tier. Wow, great start we have here. So next up is a little indie sci-fi about lucid dreams and waking nightmares called Come True. Now, I know a lot of people did not like this film because of how outlandish its ending is. The last 5 minutes or so of this movie just keep throwing twist after twist at you, and it does feel like the director is pulling out the rug from under you over and over again, and I know a lot of people didn't like that. But I think that this film demands to be seen because of its ambitions, and I have had so much fun talking with other people who have seen this movie and try to pick apart its pieces and decipher its meanings. So I think this is an incredible film, and if you hated it, I think it's worth rewatching with a different mindset. So I am going to put Come True in the amazing tier. I know, it's a little bit of a hot take, but I love this movie. Oh boy. Now, next up is Eddie Murphy's long-awaited sequel, Coming to America. Now, I love the original film. I think it's absolutely hilarious, and also I think it's been an inspiration for a lot of comedies that have come after it. But I do not like this recurring theme in Hollywood of taking movies that were good on their own and trying to cash out on them by making sequels to them all these years later. They haven't worked before, and it did not work for Coming to America. I think this film is so uninspired, and there were so very few laughs, and it just felt like a little reunion for all of these actors to come back together, which I do appreciate and I like, but I'd rather just see kind of like a reunion special where they all, you know, kind of like what they did with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That would have been more funny than what they came up with here. I just thought this was extremely lazy, and I wish it just never happened. Instead of watching this movie, just go back and watch the original. So Coming to America gets, yeah, it goes in the very bad tier. I can't put it any better. So next up is a movie that I saw at the South by Southwest Film Festival, and I've talked about it in length, so I won't go into too much detail. It was actually released on YouTube as a docu-series in 4 parts, but it's Demi Lovato Dancing with the Devil. I think this is a very important film to watch about addiction, and I think it's really brave for Demi Lovato to come out there and really tell her full story. I do think it has issues with just promotion of the album. I think it's too much, and also this propaganda of making the executive producer and her music producer the hero of the story. So I didn't like some things about it, but the first 3 parts especially were really profound and moving, and I think definitely worth a watch. So Demi Lovato Dancing with the Devil goes in the very good tier. Next up is a movie that was finally released on VOD for all of us to see, and it is nominated for Best Picture at this year's Oscars, and that is The Father. I absolutely loved this movie. I was blown away by Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman, both of whom are nominated for Best Actor and Best Supporting Actress, respectively. And this movie just really throws you for a loop. It puts you in the shoes of this father and makes you so disoriented. It almost feels like you have dementia. So it is a very harrowing and heartbreaking watch. I also think it's extremely terrifying and one of the scariest films of the year because of how disorienting it is. But this is a must-watch, guys. If you have not seen it yet, it's just incredible. So, The Father goes in the amazing tier. And now we have the film that everyone was looking forward to this month, and that is Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, I really did enjoy this film. I think the CGI is fantastic, it's wonderfully directed, the battle scenes are epic, and it's everything that the film promised us it would be. The problem that I have with Godzilla vs. Kong is everything else is lacking. The human characters, the script, there is absolutely no logic in this film. film. So all we're really left with is some fantastic action set pieces, and the rest is just completely forgettable. So unfortunately, as much as I did have a good time with this film, it's not one that I'm looking forward to going back to at all. So I will be saying Godzilla vs. Kong is just okay. I know a lot of people are not gonna love me for that one. Next up, we're going to be going over a film called The Mauritanian, which is a true story that is about a detainee in Guantanamo Bay who is left there with no charges against him for over a decade, and it's about the defense attorney who takes on his case. Now, a lot of people did not like this film at all, and I am having a hard time understanding why. I thought this was a really well put together film with a fantastic lead performance by Tahar Rahim. I just think the material in this film is so potent and powerful, and it's a really important story that needs to be told because what happened in Guantanamo Bay is absolutely unacceptable, and we can never let those atrocities happen again. So I was riveted by this film from beginning to end. Once again, I don't really understand the hate for this movie or why it's so divisive. I just thought it was an extremely moving film. So I am going to put The Mauritanian in the amazing tier. Next up is the Netflix original coming-of-age dramedy, Moxie, which was directed by Amy Poehler and is all about this young girl who starts a zine combating the sexism at her high school. I thought this was a really fun little movie that wears its heart on its sleeve. I loved its messaging, and I also think the young cast here is extremely good. A lot of these coming-of-age Netflix movies, some of the acting is a little iffy, but here I think everyone was really well cast and gave great performances. I do think the movie has some really odd narrative choices, and also it lacks this direction, this energy in its direction from Amy Poehler. I think it really could have benefited from some edge, but I still think this is a really fun little watch. Nothing to write home about or anything, but it is a good film to pass the time with a good message. So Moxie goes in the just okay tier. Next up is a movie that I don't think a lot of people have heard of, but I was actually quite looking forward to it. It's called My Salinger Year. It's about a college grad who takes a clerical job at a literary agency and ends up working for the renowned reclusive writer J.D. Salinger, who wrote Catcher in the Rye. I was really excited for it because the trailers kind of made it look like The Devil Wears Prada, but instead of Meryl Streep, we got Sigourney Weaver, and I was all in on that. This movie is entertaining enough, but it just also lacks energy, and it's a little dry, and it also goes that romantic comedy route in the end, and the romance didn't really sell me. So this is also a fun weekend watch if you have nothing else to watch, but it also is just, it's not that great. So My Salinger Year goes in the just okay tier. Now we have the brutal Bob Odenkirk-led action vehicle, Nobody. This film is about a suburban dad who's kind of stuck in a dead-end job, and a couple of thieves break into his house, and he feels violated, and kind of like a rage ignites inside of him, and we find out that he's not exactly who he seems to be. So I had so much fun with this movie. It reminded me a lot of the John Wick, Taken, and Equalizer movies, but has enough new material to really make itself seem fresh. Bob Odenkirk is the perfect leading man for this. Who would have thunk it? He really takes this role and runs with it. I would have liked his character to have been fleshed out a little bit more, but there's obviously a potential for that because I think they're really planning on making this a franchise, which I would love to see because the action in this movie is just outstanding. The hand-to-hand combat, the choreography, it just pretty much blew my mind. If you're a fan of kind of mid-budget B-movie action films, this is definitely for you. So I'm gonna say Nobody is very, very good. Next up, we have a fun little crime caper where the gangsters are the patriarchy in Pixie, and we're basically following our lead, Pixie, played by Olivia Cooke, around as she's trying to avenge her mother's death and picks up these two kind of idiots along the way who are trying to sell their stash of drugs. This is a really wacky and cheeky little movie that is actually really unpredictable. I found that I never knew what was going to come next, and it really throws some shockers your way, which I really appreciated. And Olivia Cooke just proves once again what a fantastic young actress she is. And she's also playing against type here. She's kind of this devilish femme fatale in the movie, so it's really fun to see her do something different. I just had a joyously fun time with the movie. I think it's definitely worth a watch. So Pixie, I'm going to say, is very good. And now we have Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon, which takes place in the fantasy world of Kumandra, where there's an evil force that is taking over the land, and Raya must find the last dragon to restore its humanity among its divided people. So I think there are two camps of people when it comes to Raya and the Last Dragon. I think there are the people who went apeshit over it, who absolutely loved it, and then there are the people who were kind of disappointed by it, but didn't hate it. I don't think there's really anyone out there that flat out despises this movie. I don't know how you could. I landed in the camp of absolutely loving it. I thought the animation was breathtaking. I loved the characters, even though I think they definitely could have been fleshed out more. And even though the story is a bit cliche, I mean, it is. It's a lot like Avatar: The Last Airbender. I still fell for it. And I think the humor, for some people, once again, it worked, and for some people it didn't. I thought some of it did, and some of it didn't. Definitely there were moments where Awkwafina's humor just fell flat for me. But overall, this is a world I would absolutely love to go back to. I think Disney should definitely do an animated series based on this, so we can get these characters fleshed out more. I will definitely be on board for that. But I just had a fantastic time with this movie. This will definitely be one of those Disney movies that I rewatch time and time again. So, Raya and the Last Dragon goes in the amazing tier for me. So next up, we got some killer pants in the horror movie Slaxx. Now, I was not going to watch this movie at all. I am not a fan of the inanimate objects become murderers genre. It's just not my cup of tea. But the reviews for it were so good for the most part, and everyone was talking about it, so I decided to give it a watch. I don't understand how this movie at one point had 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's just a ridiculous movie, and I don't think it's that much fun, really. I mean, a movie like this really needs to be a lot of fun for it to be worth it, and I just don't think that this movie hits that mark. But what I can say is the backstory of why the pants are murderers is quite interesting and creative, and it definitely fixed some of the issues that I had with the movie. I still think the characters are grating and annoying, and I know that they're supposed to be, but I mean, this movie was better than it ever should have been. I still don't think it's that good, though. So I'm gonna say Slaxx is a meh for me. And I'm surprised it's that high, to be honest. Next up, we have the Spongebob movie, Sponge Out of Water. So the plot of this movie is pretty inconsequential, but basically SpongeBob and Patrick go on a quest to find the kidnapped Gary. This movie goes completely CGI this time, which I think the CGI was quite good, but I really did miss the traditional animation. I think that this one, out of all three SpongeBob movies, is by far the worst. At this point, I feel like they're just running out of ideas, and they're really just milking SpongeBob for all of his worth. I did still have a lot of fun with the film, and I think there were definitely a couple of really inspired moments that made me laugh, but for the most part, this is pretty a throwaway film. But if you're a fan of SpongeBob, it's definitely worth a watch. So, the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, for me goes on the meh tier. it's just meh. I didn't hate it. Definitely didn't love it. Next up is the heist film The Vault, also known as Way Down in other countries. And this film stars Freddie Highmore as a kind of savant who joins a group of master thieves who are trying to recover an artifact from the Bank of Spain, all the while the World Cup is going on around them. This is what I call a silly, dumb, fun popcorn flick. I had so much fun with this movie. It reminds me a lot of The Italian Job and the National Treasure movies, where they throw in this added bonus of adventure that broadens the horizons of the heist genre. There was some really nail-biting, thrilling set pieces here that I was just on the edge of my seat. And even though it is a forgettable movie, I think that this is definitely one of those films that you turn on a rainy day or on a lazy Sunday and just enjoy the heck out of it. So I'm gonna say The Vault for me is very good. I had a really, really good time with that film. Next up is another film that I saw at South by Southwest and was just released on Shudder the other day, called Violation. This is a movie about a woman who is taken advantage of and basically takes her revenge out on the people who took advantage of her. I'm not gonna really say anything more about it, but I hated this movie. I thought that it was horribly edited, the characters were extremely uninteresting, and it was just boring. There are so many moments in this film that I just felt like dragged on where nothing was happening, and I've already talked about it, but there's this scene in the movie with an erect penis, and it just is on the screen for so long, just in your face. So it was just too much for me. This was a very rough watch. Some people, once again, really liked this film. It has a great score on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's just not for me, and I don't think I would recommend it really to anyone. So Violation goes in the very bad tier for me. And it's gonna stay in the very bad tier. And last but certainly not least, we have the long-awaited Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is basically the 4-hour cut that Zack Snyder always wanted us to see, but instead, a couple of years back, we got the Justice League, which sucked. I was so impressed by this movie, and as someone who is not a huge fan of the DCEU, but does really enjoy the films, I think this is the best film so far in this extended universe, even though technically it's now not considered part of the DCEU. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I would love to see the Snyderverse be continued. I know a lot of people are going a little bit overboard with that. They should probably stop. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. But I was just so impressed what Zack Snyder was able to accomplish here. He really showed us the vision that I think he had always wanted to show us, and I think all of this time and effort paid off for him. I think all of the flaws of the original Justice League, which I finally was able to watch and did not like, especially since I hadn't seen it before watching the Zack Snyder's Justice League. I wanted to wait out on that one. But I think he fixed pretty much everything that was wrong about that film. So I say kudos to Zack Snyder. I'd love to see this universe continued, and I also just loved this film. So I think Zack Snyder's Justice League was amazing. Okay, so now that we have all of our films in their respective tiers, I'm gonna move everything around just a little bit so we can rank all of these from the very worst to the very best of the month of March. So we're gonna start at the bottom here at the worst of the worst, and Bad Trip is alone there, and it's going to stay there. So we know that's definitely the worst of the month. Going to the very bad tier, I'm going to move Coming to America, I think, to the front of the pack, just because there is some entertainment value with that movie. Chaos Walking can stay there. That movie, just even talking about it again is making me angry. And then Violation violated me in so many ways. I just really do not like that film. It's so close to being in the worst of the worst tier, but it'll just stay at the very bottom of the very bad tier. Okay, going to the meh tier. as shocking as this is, I'm actually going to move Slaxx to the front of the pack, just because I think there's some real creativity with that movie. It's still not that good, but it's better than Cherry and SpongeBob. With Cherry, it can stay there. Like I said, I really do think that people are going to go back to this film and think that maybe they were a little bit too harsh on it. It's still a movie I never want to go back and revisit anyways. It's a rough watch. And then with SpongeBob, I think it's his worst outing, so he can stay at the bottom of the meh tier. Going to the just okay tier, I'm going to keep my Salinger Year at the bottom of the pack, just because it's so forgettable. And then Moxie can stay there. That movie has a lot of heart. I really do enjoy it, but the narrative choices in that movie. If you want to see a little bit more what I'm talking about, I go into more detail in my review of Moxie, so check that out if you're interested. And then Godzilla vs. Kong is at the very front of the just okay tier. Like I said, I really enjoyed that movie. I just wish everything else besides the action was better. So going to the very good tier, I'm definitely going to throw Nobody at the very front of that pack. I love that movie. I think the action is awesome. The choreography, the direction by Ilya Nyhauser is just fantastic. And honestly, if the lead character had been fleshed out just a little bit more, then it would be in the amazing tier for me. And then I'm going to say Pixie goes in front of Demi Lovato. That is just a damn fun, witty, good time. And then Demi Lovato can stay there. And The Vault is at the very bottom of the very good tier. It's just a lot of dumb fun, but nothing really better than that. So it can stay at the bottom. Now, going to the amazing tier. Now, this is where things get really complicated because I love all of these films. Okay, I'm definitely going to say that for sure, The Father is the best of the month. So we can go and start there. The Father is an incredible near masterpiece that I love. I don't know if I'll ever go back to it is the only problem with that. Just because it is a difficult viewing experience, but it's masterful nonetheless. And then I'm going to say Justice League is next up. I just think what Zack Snyder was able to accomplish there, it's amazing. It's a miracle. So count me as just a giant fan of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm happy I can say that. And then next up, I'm going to say Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon. That is just such a beautifully animated film. I just can't wait to go back to Kumandra again. And then I'm going to say Come True can stay there in that fourth spot of the month. I just love that movie. I really, just talking about it makes me want to watch it again. And then the Mauritanian can stay there at the bottom of the amazing tier. So, the top 3 films of the month of March 2021 are The Father, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and Raya and the Last Dragon. And the worst film of the month was easily Bad Trip. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching Lost in the Reel. We will see you soon.